finally, we are all here, and I'm sorry for the audience. Sorry that we are a little bit late. It's technical issues, but soon, in a minute, we will start our session, and we'll talk about post-COVID public library variants across the globe. And well, did you hear from Jeff?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, he is quiet. I will try to call him.
Yeah, I have also him on WhatsApp somewhere.
Mm.
Yeah, so while we are waiting and trying to get all panelists on the screen, for the participants, probably we can start with the warm-up exercise, which I had for you, and plan to do it a bit later, but I think we can do it. So we want to learn who are here. So if you can use the chat and write your name and which library you are from and which country you are from, and one word of positive change that happened during the pandemic. We are used to think about the pandemic that, it's a lot of things negative, but think about one word that brought either in your life or your library or in general in society positive thing. And we are trying to connect Pierre and oh yeah. I agree, Trino. I also got new skills, not of course enough as you see, because I'm struggling a little bit, but with new platforms, a hybrid, definitely. Stuart, I agree also. We know what hybrid means now in real life, real and digital. And Marcella said community. Good. Yeah, Mustafa is joining us from Cairo, from Egypt. And his library also got new skills. Very good. Okay. Okay. Pierre is a little.
Jeff is on the way.
Okay.
He answered.
And
And Pierre is trying to access, but with no luck so far.
okay. Good. I will introduce the panelists. That's nice. We are saving them time. Yeah, so those who are joining us just now, I just asked everyone to start from warm-up exercise because we are still waiting for 2 panelists to join. And warm-up exercise is a simple introduction, your name, library, country, and one positive change that pandemic brought to your life or your life of your library, and so on. Positive change in one word. Oh,
Yes.
Pierre is here. Yes. Now Jeff is on the way, right? No,
Yeah,
Edward has.
Jeff
Thank.
responded to a call. He said that he is accessing, trying to access as soon as possible.
So Pierre, did you find us? Can you hear us? You are muted if you hear us.
Oh, he can hear us.
Yeah. Pierre, can you unmute yourself and say something just to test the mic?
He is doing that, trying to do that.
Okay. I'm also trying chat. Here I have German or Romanian maybe keyboard, so it's a little bit. Okay. Hi, Jeff is now available. Can you find Jeff New Yorker? And everyone struggled, Jeff. Yeah. Yeah, there is a message for panelists how to join with voice and video. So I hope Andres still did not mute it, haven't unmuted himself. So I hope by the in the process of this session we'll make it happen. Jeff, can you join with voice and video because you are our first panelist? Oh,
Oh,
Jeff is here. I can see. Jeff, can you turn on video and audio?
Oh, okay. Oh,
Okay, we can hear you. Finally. And Pierre, can you turn on video and audio?
video audio buttons are on the video screens.
So, Edvaldas, can you try to help Pierre? Because I think I will start the session now because we are waiting for 15
Yeah.
minutes. Okay?
Okay, let's go. I'm here.
Okay. Okay, I'll try to.
Okay, I will work with Pierre.
Yeah, I'm sharing screen. And So, welcome everyone. I hope you can hear me and see the screen. It's sorry for technical issues, but finally, I think we could start this session. And this is an international panel on post-COVID public library variants. Greetings to everyone who managed to join Hopin platform and be with us on Occupy Libraries 2022 conference. I am joining you from Bucharest, Romania, and I am sending greetings to from EIFL Public Library Innovation Program team, Ugne, who is now in Lithuania, and Edvaldas, who is now in Lithuania as well. At EIFL, we believe in knowledge without borders, and we work with library partners, individual libraries, and library consortium in Europe, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. EIFL Public Library Innovation Program seek to spark innovation in public libraries through different initiatives. And today we want to speak about post-pandemic public library. So what we know about viruses, I am not specialist in this field, but I cite Pardis Sabeti, who is computational geneticist and professor at Harvard University, and she says that viruses mutate quickly, and every time it replicates, it will try something new. And if that thing improves its survival, then it will start to thrive and it will move through a population. So now let's use this and apply analogy and think about libraries that got into extraordinary situation where um, with lockdowns and all limitations that were brought by COVID-19 virus. And definitely, quite quickly, all libraries have adapted and started new services. But the question is now, when quite many barriers or limitations are lifted out, are those innovations moving through library networks? And what are those innovations that will stay with us even with less, even in post-pandemic era? Today we have 6 extraordinary panelists here from 3 regions: Africa, Europe, and Latin America. And I will introduce them. The first is Jeff Nyoka, e-learning manager of City of Johannesburg Public Library, South Africa. Mustafa Tuhami, he is senior librarian and branch manager at Zaytun branch of Misr Public Library in Egypt. And we have Trinu Sepam, director of Tallinn Central Library in Estonia. Stuart Hamilton, head of libraries development at the local government management agency Ireland. Pierre Ruprecht he is director of San Paul Leituras, which is NGO that manages São Paulo libraries in Brazil, and Marcela Poire, cultural and educational coordinator at the main library of Lima, National Library of Peru. So thank you very much for joining this panel, and I think everyone agrees with me that we are looking forward to hear what are those changes and innovations that happened across the globe with public libraries. A short outline before I give a floor to panelists. Now we are doing introduction, warming up exercise. I tried to start before before starting the panel because we had some technical issues, but then the next step is to hear 6 cases from Africa, Europe, Latin America, and there will be time for questions and answers. And then we will finish the panel with final remarks and close it. So there are some guidelines which I really I would like to encourage as many of participants and attendants as possible to really join this conversation and use chat to participate by writing your questions, comments, and sharing your thoughts about your libraries and what reactions to what you hear from the panelists. So time to warm up. As I said, we started, so I will not spend much time on that. Just if you just joined, please write into chat who you are, from where you come, and one good thing or change that has happened since the pandemic. One word only to make it more challenging. And with this, I finish sharing my screen, and we can go to the main yeah, to the main part of our panel. And first sub panel is Africa, and I would like to ask Jeff Nyoka to start sharing his screen if he has presentation and start his contribution. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna get my screen out, and then let me share the screen. So this is I'm used to the other platform, so I'm just gonna. Okay, it's this one.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than others.
Okay, yes, okay, but you can see it now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Jeff Nyoga from City of Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm the e-learning manager, and I'm just going to be brief about how we've transformed libraries due to the COVID-19 pandemic impact. Okay, so our libraries, we've got 87 libraries in a metropolitan municipality within a province called Gauteng in South Africa. We've got over 6 million citizens, and our communities is multicultural. Some they are in urban areas, some in semi-rural, and we serve both mostly youth and the unemployed. Okay, so 2020 March up to 2021, our libraries closed because of the pandemic. That was our biggest challenge. For the first time, libraries were closed. So what we noted was that there was an increase in digital divide where learners had to learn from home and parents had to try and assist them with no digital skills. The digital economy was booming, more people having to buy things online, interact online, do transactions online, and most industries experienced unemployability. So we also looked at our relevance as libraries and looking at the competition from platforms like your Amazons, your YouTubes, and other areas that people found information. The first response that we looked at is we already have social media, so why don't use Facebook? We started a Facebook lockdown video series because our Facebook platform was not very active. We managed to get librarians to produce digital content on various topics. We even won the EIFL Public Library Innovation Award in 2021. So that was the first way that we responded, as you can see on the images. The second response, we used the money that we won from the EIFL Award to introduce a website. Now, this website is not just a library services website, because we want to promote digital literacy by giving access to free online courses and e-resources. And we've reached more than 6,000 visits since 2021 November without any promotion and marketing. So what makes the website unique is that it's not just telling you where to find library services or what to do in your library, but it's more to do with digital content creation, accessing digital content and resources, and improving digital literacy. So the other digital transformation focus programs is really pushing digital literacy for communities. We did a mobile readathon program, which is where young people are reading stories using mobile devices. On this image below, we recently had the event in May, and we had over 100 visitors in this event to watch these kids participate in this competition. And the one above is a coding program, which is an interesting South African-based program for teaching kids how to do coding using puzzles and a mobile app. We also introduced our users to online courses. For librarians as well, we really thought we should focus on digital literacy for them. Some of them are studying digital innovation at a local university. We also encourage the staff to do online courses. As you can see, we've got partnerships with Google, IBM, and Microsoft, among other entities. And there we are strategizing, doing what we call community, and it's like a forum for librarians to share ideas on what they've done. So that's what we've done as far as pushing the library services post the COVID pandemic. And I think using the existing platforms has actually encouraged us to even think of other ideas going forward. Thank you. I can take questions.
Thank you very much. We'll have time for questions after the second panelist from Egypt. Mustafa,
Okay.
the stage is yours, please.
Okay, thanks, Ramona. I'm gonna to mute my video and share my screen. Okay. So can you see my screen now? Hello?
Yes, we can see your screen. Just go to your presentation and put it on presenting mode. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Ramona. I am happy to share our experiment in Egypt regarding engaging people and libraries during the experience of COVID pandemic outbreak. So I work in Misr Public Library, which is the biggest network of public libraries in Egypt. So the library was closed on 15th of March 2020, and we stayed about 100 days at home. So my library works using has a target figures to be achieved annually. So we usually use monthly and annual statistics to measure the performance to check the influence of the library on the community. That's why it was a serious crisis for a library to be closed and lose lots of our active members. So that we have had to think quickly to fulfill users' needs while the library is closed and most people are staying home. So after the library reopened in July, we taken all precautions to avoid the expected infections for both staff and members, but many people were still worried to come to the library premises because of the infection. That's why we had to continue working and reaching people as much as possible. We had some new services have been provided, That's why this will be presented in the next slides. These are some of the online activities we have provided while the library was closed. So the most effective program was a live coaching session. This one. So the people, it was very active because it helped people to, as much as possible, to invest in their time and figure out how skilled they are, and it helped them to reorganize their priorities and invest in their time while they are staying at home. Life coaching is very effective for people. That's why we had collaboration with the International Coaching Federation (ICF). We have a chapter Egypt chapter here, so we had a collaboration with them in April 2020 to have join programs for library members for the upcoming year, from now till the upcoming year. So we also have succeeded to deliver 222 training programs, online training programs with 23,442 participants, while the library was closed in the association or in interrelationship with some associations. So this was the most distinctive new service we have provided while the library was closed is the mobile library. We have bought this library in August 2020, and the first outreach visit was in October 2020. So we had to visit the schools, orphanages, the historical places, public squares, and much more. So in just 18 months, we had outreach 253 visits and have provided 947 activities with 16,018 participants. So that's why we had a great feedback from the people, from the community members. That's why we bought another two mobile libraries about just a month ago to expand in reaching all locations that are far from the library premises with the Greater Cairo. So one of the new services that people like it was a book delivery. We had an agreement with a private shipping company to deliver the borrowed books from and into the library. People like this service. That's why it is still working even after the most of restrictions have been eased and life is almost become normal recently. So here are the KPIs of the library activities during the last 9 months. As you can see, here are 47 percentage for the art activities and 35 percentage for the scientific and linguistic activities. So, and here is some examples from the activities and programs that we have provided during the last year, immediately after the library it has opened and till the last couple of months. Here is scientific activities and entertainment activities, and here is this was the celebration of 27 years of opening the library. It was just in the last in April, and this is the former prime minister of Egypt. He was attending one of the events, and this was a collaboration with Slovenia Embassy in Cairo to have the library tree. And here is some another activities of which is on entertainment and collaboration with the schools. Okay. We also have we always donate items from central library to the other regional libraries in Egypt. So in the last 9 months we have donated 21,550 25 books, and all target figures has been achieved after we were so worried because we have lost a lot of active members. But recently, in the last 9 months, we almost all target figures has been achieved. Okay, so that's why we have to find new spaces to fulfill users' needs. So this is an example of the new spaces at the library, and you can find more information about the library, the Central Library, since it opens in 1995 in this infographic. And this is one of the recent activities that have been implemented a few months ago. And please feel free to reach out and for collaboration and exchange ideas. Thank you so much. Hello, Ramona. Hello.
Okay. Hello. Thank
Hello,
you.
Ramona.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mustafa, for your presentation. Now we have some time for questions, and I don't see anyone asking questions on chat, so maybe there are questions from peer panelists to first to panelist Jeff and Mustafa. Anyone?
Yes, I would like to say that I'm really actually fan of mobile libraries. And I was thinking that you said that you received one mobile library and you use it to reach out to children. Do you think that you need more than one mobile library and it will make more effect and you can also use it to reach more adults, elderly people? It was from Mustafa.
Yeah.
Yes, excuse me. I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah.
hear the question. Sorry.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'll ask again. I'm a fan of mobile libraries. We also have one in our library. You talked about that you use mobile library to reach children, and I was wondering if you need more than one mobile library so you can also have more impact to adults and elderly as well. What do you
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
Mustafa?
Yeah, we have started just with one particular mobile library because we didn't have mobile library earlier. So it was a great chance in pandemic time to try to reach out people as much as possible. So we had to reach to them in compounds and schools and orphanages and so on. So after this experiment has succeeded, we had bought another two mobile libraries about just a month ago. So to be able to reach out freely, and we also provide services not just for kids, but also for adults, and users can take an immediate library membership card within the library, the mobile library. We have a laptop and a printer and so on. We have a stock for the mobile library so they can borrow items immediately. So we are doing our best to provide a variety of programs for both children and adults to be what is it, to engage people as much as possible. So
Thank you, Mustafa.
yeah.
I if is there a question for Jeff? Anyone? If not, I have a question for Jeff. I heard from colleague librarians saying that after lockdown was lifted, people are too tired to use online format services and programs. So how about your platform or your website that you introduced after lockdown? Is it is it on high demand? How you describe it?
Thank you, Ramon, for that question. Our experience is actually the opposite, because when I introduced the lockdown video series, most librarians were very reluctant to actually participate in content creation, because I think it was sort of a new skill to be introduced to. I had to select very few librarians to coach them and say, these are the topics you can talk about, and I even prepared scripts for them. But what actually happened is that 6 months later, towards the end of 2020 to beginning of 2021, yeah, I had more librarians now wanting to participate in video content creation, sending videos. If you go to our Facebook page, Joburg Libraries, you'll actually see that we have videos coming up every day. And we got to a point where we felt the need to now train librarians on how to produce content. And on the website itself, I've seen more librarians wanting to write for our blog and submit content. So for me, it's the opposite. It's where people now have realized the importance of technology to be used for various library programs. So I actually look forward to more libraries gaining more digital skills so that they can participate, because they are interested. They just need the tools. I think that was the only challenge, to say, do we have enough connectivity? Do we have, vlogging tools? Which is something we are working on as a department, to buy vlogging tools as well.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. We will get back to this question, I think. Now, I suggest we moved from Africa to Europe and look what happened there. And the first speaker from Europe is Trinu Sepam from Tallinn City Library, Estonia. Trinu, welcome.
Yes. Hello, everyone, again. I don't have a presentation, so you all have to listen to what I say. Tallinn Central Library is the biggest public library in Estonia, a small country in Eastern Europe with approximately 1.3 million inhabitants, and 1/3 of them live in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia. And today I focus on how we do things in Tallinn Central Library today, when our libraries are fully open with no restrictions, which we had during the first 2 years of COVID epidemic. During the past 2 years, we initiated lots of new e-services, including Read Aloud, where librarians read children's stories via Skype. We had digital seniors. We had newspapers for elderly via telephone or Skype. And of course, various e-trainings and events on the web, including social web. We opened our e-libraries to all Estonians, not only to inhabitants of Tallinn. We sort of transported every service and idea to the web and used all the information communication technology we had, and that was free for everyone on the web to do that. Even though we couldn't offer activities on site, almost all our rooms were occupied with librarians who offered e-services. Today, when there are no restrictions, people still ask us to offer e-services for them. There are people who prefer e-services, families with small children or people with long working hours who don't have the time to go to the library, and children still get ill, etc. As Ramon said, people are also somewhat tired of e-services. More and more they ask us trainings and events on site. They want to meet their friends again, study in the library. So before we noticed, our library rooms were occupied again with library users. The same rooms who used to offer e-services. And the same librarians who offered e-services also offer now trainings and activities on site. Because you just really don't want to say to people that, please don't come to the library. We need the rooms and the librarians to offer e-services. Now that's a challenge. There's no going back to the time before COVID, unless information and communication technology doesn't literally explode. 3 years ago, we had about 450,000 virtual visits. In 2020, we had more than 900,000 virtual visits, and last year, more than 1 million virtual visits. Are we going to get more finances bigger rooms and more librarians to offer both services and activities before COVID epidemic and e-services implemented during COVID epidemic. Not likely. We have to make choices, test the demand and set priorities on the development of services. Our new challenge is to find the balance between the services and the activities on site and on the web. So, what services on the web we still offer? We are flexible. We still offer most of the e-services we implemented during COVID epidemic, but most of them on demand. For instance, we have a list of library lessons for classes on our website, and teachers can choose if they would like to come on site or they prefer the lessons on Zoom or some other platform. We schedule a lot and we observe the demand. There are trends we can assume, but we still observe because we don't want to miss the right time to change what and how we offer to our library users. You probably want to know which we have given up. Well, for instance, being always available on chat rooms. We were testing many platforms during COVID period. For instance, Discord. We used it to help students with their homework. But even though many students really like to get help anonymously, we have decided to invite them back to the library where we can teach them maneuvering between bookshelves and books. As I said, it's a question of choices and resources. And we can always invite them back to chat rooms when the occasion calls for it again. But back to what else? Quality. We used and still do it today to make videos using our smartphones and tablets. But more time passed, the more we started hearing about the quality of events. So we have a professional video recording equipment now to have better quality on events. And we also have better presentation skills as well. Past 2 years have taught us what to observe when turning on the camera, the background, words moving, etc. But we also develop services on site. I heard today's keynote speaker talking about library of things. It's good to say that we lend out all kinds of things, starting from sports equipment and ending with seeds. We also have new things. Last year, we started borrowing tools, and now a few weeks ago, we started lending out museum tickets. So everyone can borrow a ticket and visit the museum free of charge. And of course, we offer services for war refugees from Ukraine. And today they need services on site the most. They're physically in the library, or we are physically where they are. They need our help for finding information. They need to use the computers for finding a job, connecting with family and friends in Ukraine for remote work or distance learning. And now we have separate laptops for that kind of use. Why laptops? Because this kind of service needs mobility in order to protect personal information and to give them room, for instance, to cry. And again, that's a question of rooms. We use the same rooms to offer all the services, so lots of hard choices. We have lots of services, lots of ideas, but not enough finances and human resources, so we have to make choices. So I thank you for now, and we'll answer questions later after Stuart.
Yeah, thank you very much, Trino, and you really raised good points, and thank you for also talking about Ukraine and Slava Ukraine. And now we go to Ireland, from north of Europe to, I don't know, Stuart, if you consider yourself middle of Europe or somewhere around. And Stuart, welcome, and your time for your sharing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramona. Hi, everybody. I'm Stuart Hamilton. I'm the head of libraries development at the local government management agency in Ireland, in Dublin. My job is to coordinate the National Public Library Strategy with the 330 public libraries in the country. We're not a hugely different size, really, from Trina's situation up there. And actually, listening to Trina, listening to Mustafa, listening to Jeff, to be honest with you, there's some common themes emerging, really, and some of the things that I have to say will come through again. But I'm here in Ireland right now in June 2022. We're well out of the pandemic. It seems, quite a long way in the rearview mirror almost at this point. But when we look back recently, we noted that Irish libraries seem to have been closed for more days than many other European colleagues. I also wear a different hat as the president of the National Authorities on Public Libraries in Europe Forum, which was extremely useful during COVID because it meant that I had colleagues in 26, 27 other countries to hear from about how they were tackling COVID. And we produced a couple of reports which are available on the NAPL website, which I think will be of interest to people here, because again, they show some of the commonalities that we all had to deal with. So obviously the biggest thing that happened to us, as with everybody else, is that our doors had to close, but we made it very clear in our public communications and messaging that libraries were not closed. It was the buildings that were closed, and that we moved our services very quickly online. We spent most of the period between March 2020 and sort of really the end of 2021 in periods of lockdown, and then in periods of kind of semi-opening. So when libraries opened during that period, it was very, very restricted. But very quickly, at the beginning of the pandemic, we shifted to digital, but we did do some physical innovations, similar in some ways to the use of the mobile libraries that we heard earlier on. We implemented home delivery services. So different to mobile libraries, very targeted, people calling the library. And one of the interesting things there, it seemed innovative, but it's kind of basic library work. We found a big role for recommending books to people. Some of the sorts of things that maybe now we get from the Amazon algorithm suddenly came back into the library job. Oh, I like murder mysteries. What books do you have when I can't browse the shelves? What can you do for me? We would package that up. We would send that out to houses. We also had situations where we implemented contact and collect, where people would come down to the libraries and pick up the books that they'd identified with the librarians. We did other things which were really important in the context of the pandemic, because people who needed government benefits, they needed to have access to forms that they needed to fill out. So we would be printing the forms and handing them out on the library premises in a very controlled environment. But mostly, as with everybody else, we switched to digital. So a big focus on digital events that Trina's mentioned, a big focus on ebooks and e-audio books and our online resources, and really trying to get the things together for that. We did do some really interesting innovations in terms of sort of ICT. We partnered with Microsoft to implement airband technology. We took the inspiration a little bit from the US. We didn't do this so much in Ireland, but in the US during the pandemic, you probably read about people pulling their cars up to libraries that were closed in the buildings, but using the library Wi-Fi. And we wanted to expand the library Wi-Fi well beyond the building. So with things like airband technology, you can use the library's base internet connection and amplify it and send it out maybe 5 or 10 kilometers beyond the building, so that people can still be using Wi-Fi provided by the library and library services, but they don't have to be there. So we've run a very interesting project in one of our local authorities with a pilot to move the library Wi-Fi beyond the building. And I think there's a lot of potential for that as a future library service. We had to innovate in other really kind of odd areas that we never expected, particularly around health and safety. We had to implement quarantining procedures for returned books. We had to do a lot with health and safety and management of numbers of people in spaces. So a lot of our libraries now have software for managing the number of people in the building at any one time, which is not something we ever thought we were ever going to be putting into the libraries, but that's with us now. And, we found ourselves being a much more visible part of the country's COVID response than perhaps we were before. In an initial address to the nation right at the start of the pandemic, the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of the country, specifically mentioned librarians as having a major role to play in combating the pandemic, which was incredible for morale and for visibility. And over the following sort of 12, 18 months, at the local authority level, which is where the public libraries live, we found that the digital skills that the staff had in organising Teams meetings, online events, activities, people from other departments, housing, planning, they would come to the libraries to find the skills to be able to reach out to their own constituencies. So the library's profile within their co-workers really increased. And that also happened at national levels because of the increase in ebooks and e-reading. Using the BorrowBox online platform, people loved that. They could still get their reading. That made all the national newspapers. And we were able to leverage some of this increased profile to get more funding. And we did a national reading campaign during the pandemic called Ireland Reads, which challenged people to set aside some time for reading on a particular National Reading Day. And we built on that. You remember that I talked about librarians recommending titles. We built a book recommendation engine, and we based it on that concept of couch to 5K. I don't know if you've seen that, where if you're feeling unfit but you want to eventually be able to run 5 kilometers, then there's an app that will tell you how many meters you need to cover a day in order to reach 5K in 2 months' time. So we said, you want to read Lord of the Rings and you may be a slow reader. Well, you'll need 30 minutes every day over 3 months if you want to read that book. And we did that for 1,000 titles, all recommended by librarians across all sorts of genres. And we built a website where people could come, and then we would direct them to the library services. So we were able to really pick up and build on some of the responses to the pandemic in some really innovative ways. Now, just to sort of finish, where are we now? Well, Trina's identified a couple of areas where we really need to keep going. And in order to provide all these services, you need the skilled staff. So we're continuing to do an online training program for staff in things like digital presentation. But you also need the ICT. You need better cameras, better microphones, better ICT to be able to deliver the programs. Those things aren't cheap. If you've seen a massive increase in people reading ebooks and e-audiobooks, you're going to see a corresponding massive increase in the amount of money you're spending on ebooks and e-audiobooks. So that needs to come from somewhere. That's going to be with us going forward. So how do we deal with that? Because the terms and conditions under which we get those ebooks are not good for libraries. We don't own any of those books. They're just licensed. There's still issues out there now about the new normal on these online events. Particularly, we do a lot of story times in English language. I've discovered it's English language mostly. Reading titles by big children's authors can get you on the radar of publishers who are interested, shall we say, interested is a nice word, to understand, whether or not that's actually legal for you to do. So it's perfectly legal under copyright for you to read a children's story in the library. But if you do that digitally and you record it, you suddenly enter into a whole different area of copyright sort of issues. So those things are still unresolved even at this time. And then the biggest issue I would say in front of us now, despite all of this innovation, and I think it was touched upon a little bit again by Trina, is that sort of, on the one hand, we've got, is there out there now a purely digital library user? Somebody who wishes to engage with the libraries, but only in a digital sense. They've got no need to come into the buildings. If there is that a good thing for us? Let's have a think about that. That's still something to think about. But then there's also a large number of people who are digitally fatigued. So, we need to bring those people back into the libraries. And I would say that we have not reached our pre-pandemic engagement levels yet. We're at about 70% of foot traffic in our libraries, about 70% of engagements. That's a big challenge for us because we are now fully open. How are we going to get these people back? Is it just libraries or is that across society? Are people considering how they engage with public spaces again? So anyway, look, Ramina, I think I may have gone slightly over, but there's a few thoughts there maybe for a bit of food for thought.
Yes, thank you, Stuart, very, very much. You brought some also national view on innovations that appear during this period, and it's really very interesting. So any questions for Stuart and Trino from other panelists? No? Okay. Just and also I think it's brilliant to raise a question about the new type of library user, just only digital user, and whether we are ready to serve this type of users, or we need to. The question is, do we need to bring them physically to library? Whoever wants to comment on that. Trino, do you have any only digital users now, or whether you following them?
We have also only digital users. And we have also probably people using our services who are not our library users. With some electronic services which we implemented, we decided that we're not going to ask them if they are library users, especially when we offered e-services for children. Whoever needed that librarian read a story, we did that. And we didn't ask, do you have a card? But of course, there are some services that we ask the library guard. They have to be a member of the library. And we have lots of users who ask us both services on site and electronic services as well. And then there are users who only want to use services on site. And I think that most, as Stuart said, we need to get these people back on libraries now. We have to say that now it's more safe. We have more knowledge now how to offer you different services more safely. So we have the same challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, Stuart, well.
Yeah, I'd say that the kind of the digital only user is causing us some, and I say us here because we're kind of talking about it across a number of European countries, and I'm also talking about it with New York Public Library. There's a little bit of a concern, I feel, that ebooks and e-audiobooks through libraries are so easy to access that there potentially is no engagement with the library. And because ebooks are provided by third parties, they're not generally provided by libraries themselves. You use Overdrive or you use BorrowBox. Your users are confusing the idea of the library with a service provided by a vendor. And my colleague in New York calls ebooks anti-branch technology, as in you have people that basically will never come into your library, you'll never see them, but yet you're paying money on their behalf, and they're often middle-class users who may not necessarily need your services as much as some of the money that you could use for everyone. Now, obviously, libraries are for everybody, middle class, lower class, upper class, whatever class you want. But I think it's an interesting thing for us to tackle as to whether that's a desirable outcome for us.
Really good point. Anti-branch technology, and I think with well-developed public library networks in European countries and probably North America, it might be a little bit considered as a threat to branches. However, if we take the countries that in lower resource countries, I guess this anti-branch or better reach technology might be a way to go. Okay, thank you very much. We'll still, I hope, have some time to get to our discussion. And now I would like to travel across the ocean to Latin America and start a Latin America sub panel with Pierre from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Pierre, welcome.
Well, sorry. Hello, everyone. It's a joy to be here with you. I'm talking from the Sao Paulo Library and the Parque Villa Lobos Library in Brazil. Ramon, forgive me for the contact problems we've had, and thank you very much for inviting me to this event. On March 10, 2020, despite being worried with the whole situation, we were all very happy in Sao Paulo Library. We just had finished preparing the program to receive at the Sao Paulo Library a group of 14 young people from the small city of Barra do Una, 150 kilometers away. They were between 14 and 16 years old, and we all were going to start the project to establish a small community library there in this beautiful seaside town, crossed by a road. On the right side of the road, a stupendous resort and the sea. On the left side of the road, hovels and more hovels of the local residents, former artisanal fishermen, current servants in the rich houses, in the marina, and in the commerce. The next day, we canceled the boys' trip, and by March 16, the bustling Sao Paulo Library was closed and silent. We all experienced it, of course, in one way or another. Our first reaction was to put on masks, almost wear diving suits, and go out producing things online like hell without thinking much about what we were doing. In 2 weeks, we realized that it made no sense. We then stopped. We had to rethink everything. And that's how this period of history that we call the pandemic really began. Rethinking everything meant going back to basics. Why are we here? Who are our patrons really? Our users, their name. What do they do? How are they really coping with this new and precarious life? How can we get in touch with them? In Sao Paulo, which is a huge city, more than 60% of people don't have internet at home or have it with a very low quality. How indeed we can serve them? With this in mind, we've designed and redesigned countless services and programs, many very unsuccessful and some successful. Sometimes simple things such as phone conversations and later via WhatsApp with elderly people to teach them how to use their smartphones to access public services. Sometimes more complex things like being able to implement a digital library service for users, or distributing food, masks, alcohol gel, and books together to our audience, our poor audience. Among the countless programs and services that were created, recreated, and modeled with our patrons, I selected just one of the simplest, but at the same time, most capable of teaching our library to improve its essence. It's not exactly spectacular, but for us, it has a deep and true meaning. The Sao Paulo Library is known for its immense diversity of audiences. About 25% of its daily audience of 1,000 people roundabout. There are homeless people living on the streets or in shelters. We had a very successful program to welcome these people in the library. Going back to basics in the pandemic meant quickly identifying the groups of people who would most need our services. And in this case, a substantial part of the services was the homeless services of library. Many of these people live under the mark of invisibility. They are simply not recognized in the town. Being the simple fact of being recognized, being called by their names, being heard, it's the main initial service of the library. Some of these people have cell phones, but most don't. The recovery of the communication channel ranged from phone calls to contact with the shelters, help create conditions in the shelters to establish remote communication, try to get better services from the telephone company for the shelter, provide them with laptops from the library. Then prepare materials to hold remote meeting between library teams, shelter teams, and sheltered people. Also prepare materials to deliver to the shelters, books, proposals, materials for games, etc. And finally, one day, turn on and establish eye contact. The most exciting part of the program. João, from the library services team, sees Luizão on the screen and waves. "What's up, Luizão?" And Luizão replies, "Oba, João, how are you there? I'm happy to see you." Despite the precarious connection, the library starts working again. The two groups separated by a screen, talk animatedly, laugh, play, read together. Somehow, a small community is remade. At the end of the session, they ask themselves what they are missing the most. And from there, they say goodbye and start preparing for the next meeting. In the slow return to the face-to-face, to what we call the life in 3 dimensions, this is the first group that goes back to the library. However, a channel for those staying in the shelters is now open. An individual channel with some who have a telephone, it's now open. And we realize in this and in so many other cases that we have experienced in this period that it makes no sense to close those channels. And we discovered something more about how to stay in the essence of our work. After all, the essence is always the same: how to maintain contact between whole people on both sides, with stories, with knowledge, with imagination, with desires, with their pains and with their joys. And by the way, the beautiful little community library in Barra do Una is now operating on site. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pierre. And from Brazil, we go to Peru, to Marcela, who at her side. It's very early morning. Good morning, Marcela, and welcome to this panel. Your word, please.
Thank you, Ramon, and good morning, good afternoon, good night to everybody who is watching, to our other panelists. It actually has been very wonderful to hear you all talk about the important work that you have done throughout the pandemic and continue to do. And it makes me proud to be a part of, this community where we share all the nice things and the good things that we have done. So cheers and a special hello to all our panelists too. I want to share, let me see if it works, my PowerPoint. I don't know if you can see it. Can somebody say?
It's coming. Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm good. So what I'm, like Ramon said, I'm from Lima, Peru in South America. And one of the things that I've been also doing while I was listening to all of the other panelists talk is to think about how, you know, we are here talking about different strategies that the libraries have taken, and some are very similar and some are very different, right? But I think that, you know, the pandemic affected our countries and our regions very differently also, right? There's also similarities, but there's also differences, and our realities in our countries are also very different. So when the pandemic struck Peru and Latin America in general, a lot of inequalities began to surface. And one of those inequalities surfaced when we realized that everything, not only libraries, but a lot of government services in general were digital, right? Everything was digital. That's nothing new for us now. But in Peru, for example, we realized that 60% of the population in 2020 didn't have access to the internet, right? And of those people, also elderly folks, older adults, 70% of them didn't have internet. So while the library, the National Library of Peru, was conducting and creating all these digital services, we were also thinking of ways in which we could reach out to people that didn't have that connectivity, that didn't have that internet, right? We wanted to close the gaps of access of information that not only exist in general, but also existed when the pandemic came, right? What do we do with, or how can we help people that do not have internet when everything is becoming digital? So what we did in the main public library of Lima, which is part of the main library of Peru, the National Library of Peru, is that we started a service that is really, some of us describe it as kind of like a personalized audiobook in a way, right? What we do is we have a large group of volunteers that volunteer their work for the library and for the general population, right? And we have this group of volunteers that receives kind of like a schedule of people that they have to call throughout the week, right? And these people have signed up to receive the lectures. So we're really, what we're doing is we're reading books and we're reading other material to people in different parts of Peru. And at first we were thinking about how we wanted to be there for elderly folks, how we wanted to be there for people that didn't have access to the internet. But we soon started to realize that that wasn't the only group that we were actually reaching out to. We started realizing that this service had the potential to reach out to people of all different ages, of all different realities, right? Because, you know, like a lot of you have said, we were in a lockdown from March to at least February of 2021, maybe December or January, right? And things have slowly started to, you know, we have slowly started to go back to these public spaces, but like Stuart also said, not in the same, not with the same frequency, right? So with this, what I wanted to say is that we discovered that this service through the telephone, we were actually bringing the library to people's home through the phone, right? In a time where weren't allowed to leave our houses, right? So I don't know if we can see here how, we started in June of 2020 with a small group, but as the months started to the year started to continued, we started to receive more people wanting to participate in this service, right? And most of our callings have been in 2021, in this mixture between people going back to these public spaces, but also staying home and continuing to take care of themselves, because the pandemic has also had a lot of different waves, right? So it's a lot of this a lot of us are trying to adapt to this. Sometimes we stay home, sometimes we leave, sometimes we stay home, sometimes we leave, right? So I really do think that even though this was very, very beneficial, and as you can see in this graph, mostly during this time in which we were stuck at home and trying to find our ways back outside, even though we are making less calls a month, right? Now we're making in the last month in May, we almost made 400 phone calls to people, right? But so even though the most of the calls came in 2001, like I was saying, it's interesting to see how people are still finding this very useful, right? So this is a good thing for us, because we're realizing that this service is helping different people with different necessities, right? Of something very beautiful also of this project is that one of our youngest people that we call is 6 years old, and the oldest is 93 years old, right? So imagine the amount and the difference of the variety of types of readings that we're doing for these people, right? And I could go on and tell you a lot of stories, but I know that time is short. But if you want to, maybe if we have a little bit more time, I can tell you some of these really interesting stories. Another interesting thing is that we realized that almost about half of the phone calls that we are making, more than half, sorry, are actually towards women. So this made me start to think how in countries like Peru and countries in Latin America, a lot of women are doing a lot of household chores during the pandemic that they're not necessarily receiving for, right? So a lot of moms had to stay home, work from home, and have their kids study from home and clean the house and cook and all these different things, right? So I think that this service really has helped them receive the information they need without getting the extra step of having to leave the house, and then with who do I leave the kids, and et cetera, right? There's a lot of, we can think about this with the gender perspective also, but I don't want to go into detail too much about that. But finally, one of the last extensions that we have made, and this is also thanks to some of the money that we received from EIFL for the innovation award that we received from you, is that we now offer this service in 3 Peruvian native languages. So we're not only making phone calls in Spanish, but we are also doing it in Quechua Cusco Collao, Quechua Chanca, and Quechua Ancash Central, which are some of the most spoken native languages in Peru. So now we are not only doing this in Spanish and trying to close these gaps of information in general, because in Peru, everybody has a library, right? So also giving this service is also bringing the library no matter where you are in Peru, right? So we're not only doing closing the gaps with the telephone, but we're also closing the gaps in linguistically, right? So that is also something that we are very proud of in this phone service, Allo BNP, that's what it's called. And here I just wanted to give you an example. One of the extensions that we have with this telephone service is that on special occasions during the year, like Mother's Day, like Christmas, like you know, the International Day of the Book, you know, all these different important dates, we throw this kind of like a campaign where anybody can sign up. And so maybe I want to give my sister a present for Christmas, and we're not together, we're not, you know, we're locked in our own homes separately, right? But so I can't see her on Christmas. So one of the things we did is that we had volunteers, you know, calling people that would sign up, so I could sign my sister up and tell her, I love you, you're the best sister in the world. Here's a piece of The Little Prince that you really enjoy, and I know and I love you. Merry Christmas. So one of the volunteers would pick up that phone, but that assignment, and would call my sister and read her a fragment of The Little Prince and tell her my, you know, my present, right? So we did that for Christmas. But now, for example, on Mother's Day, that was a couple of weeks ago, for the first time, we did this service also in native languages. So here I just wanted to show you, you know, how our library, the National Library, you know, does the publicity too, right? So we have the publicity here in Spanish, and we have here the publicity in one of the native languages of Quechua. So really, I have a lot more to say, but I know that time is short, so I'll just answer questions from there. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcela, for joining us and sharing your situation and services that Peru National Library introduced across the country. I have information from organizer that we still have some minutes for our session. So my question actually, or more like comment, is really, it seems that during pandemic, libraries rediscovered some called traditional methods like mobile libraries and mobile services that we knew about, but somehow I think maybe not used so well whenever, you know, we had an access to physical libraries. But at the same time, we discovered or used more tools that are available to library to reach out to their communities, right? Digital, but also telephone. And somehow, to me, it appears that we started to be more aware about inequalities and variety of our users and user needs during the pandemic, which is probably a very good perspective for public libraries, really, to look into, you know, the whole spectrum of what we have in terms of tools and resources that you know, available, but at the same time, which of those resources and tools and channels works for diverse communities that we serve. So I wonder if other panelists have questions to either Pierre or Marcela, or comments. Stuart, yeah.
Just to say that I definitely recognize from Marcela's presentation the value that some of our users got from having access to libraries via telephone was absolutely huge. And we also set up in every local authority. Ireland has 30 local authorities, and the libraries are spread across them. every local authority had a community response line, and often the library was given the responsibility to run that. I think that was a recognition that librarians can do those sorts of services, and again, it was another way that that the visibility of the library service, even within the local authority, was raised. But yeah, that kind of analog access was hugely important. And in the chat, I put some of the stuff, and we had a bit of discussion there about the digital, the training that's needed to bring older people up to speed on digital devices. But what I think was really interesting was something which we've known in the library community for years, which is that digital competence is very randomly distributed amongst age groups. And you know, we've been talking for years about the digital divide in the sorts of groups, Ramona, that you and I go to at the UN and all this sort of stuff. It was very interesting to have local authority people start trying to tell me about the digital divide as if they'd just discovered it, if you see what I mean. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because of course we were able to say, yes, you're right. Yes, absolutely, we can help you with that. But I think, Ramona, you were asking, you know, what really sort of was a result of this. I think that concept of digital, it was interesting because we veered between, nationally, we veered between digital inclusion and digital exclusion. No one could ever settle on precisely what the term was, but it's become a lot more mainstreamed. That's what I want to say, and I think that's a positive thing that the pandemic has done.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Anyone else? Jeff, please.
Okay, for me, it's two things I wanted to.
We cannot hear you. I think
Oh, can you hear me now?
it's very low.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
It's my volume. Okay, can you hear me now?
it's better, but okay, let's. I
Okay,
will.
so I wanted to just touch on the two things. Stuart talked about how the library services actually attracted the community within other departments. We had emergency services looking at our website and saying they would like us to help them to upload online courses for their staff because they can't access the physical colleges, the firemen, the ambulance drivers, and the traffic police. So we are working with them. So we will be the backbone through the website once we purchase the learning management system. The other thing also that I noticed is that language in our country, language becomes an issue in terms of digital literacy. To say if there's a digital divide, most of the online content is in English. And in South Africa, we've got 12 languages, but in Johannesburg specifically, we have at least uh, four popular languages. So what I've done with the website, I've made it translatable to Xhosa, Zulu, and Sotho, which are popular languages. Even though it's Google Translate, but it helps for someone who doesn't understand English to be able to read some of the content. But going forward, what we want to do is to try and package digital content that can be translated into local languages for people to understand these this digital content, and to be able to download even books. Like for example, you are talking about Overdrive. On Overdrive, do we have books in our indigenous languages, for example? Or it's mostly English books. So for our local books, they are not. Most of them are not there in Zulu or Xhosa. So we want to try and find other platforms that can accommodate different languages. But also the point about the ebooks being it takes away the branch experience. That's what we also noted, that when you tell people about the e-drive, the overdrive, they'll tell you, I want to come to the library, because sometimes the whole pandemic experience has been very lonely for some people. It has been a very lonely experience. So people really wanted to come inside the library, even though our circulation on Overdrive went high. But we had people who said, we want to interact with you. In fact, the last event we did with these kids, we saw parents coming in numbers to this event because they haven't had such, they were not even wearing masks. So it was such a beautiful experience. I think Ramon you would see it on our Facebook page, how much it had that impact. So I just wanted to share that kind of experience. And also the fact that going forward, we want to balance the two. We want to make sure that people are able to learn new skills through our website and digital content, but also to find ways of working with communities in libraries.
Thank you very much, Jeff. So I think I will slowly go to the wrap up and get back to the viruses and those viruses that, every time do something new so that they improve their possibility of their survival. So the question for you, all of you, are: do you think our public libraries are improved survival skills during the pandemic and are going to do much better in the future? So we can start from Trino, Tallinn.
Yes, of course. We didn't know before COVID what we're actually capable of. We didn't know how fast thinking we can be. So I think we have much more knowledge and experience now when the new pandemic waves come. But of course, it will depend on the virus, what's going to happen. So let's hope for the best.
Okay, so in terms of emergencies, we can speak probably broader, not just the pandemic or health threats, but also other threats that are coming up towards us through climate change, and um, also war conflicts like we see in Ukraine, and so on. So next, Mustafa, what's your
Yeah,
thought?
yes, of course, Ramona. I just we have discovered that we working together more active when we working online to each other. So we were too active, and we have discovered some new skills that we can do. So we love to work online with each other as a team. So yeah, I like it. We like to work, and it was what is it? An active period for at least in my team, because
Mhm.
some other teams in the library was not active enough, but concerning our team here, we were very active.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
Stuart, what's your opinion?
I am optimistic, very optimistic. I think that we've not only learnt a lot about disaster response and keeping services going when people can't physically get in, but I think we may have learnt more about our users, what they want, so that we would deliver digital, but we've all talked about analog, and that's equally important. And I think what's going to be key now is in an advocacy perspective, making sure that librarians and library associations, whoever's doing the advocacy, understand where the post-COVID policy conversations are going on, where governments are putting together recovery packages or recovery policies. So in Ireland, for example, we have loads of new policies relating to remote working, rural regeneration, regenerating towns that are all off the back of COVID. So we need to identify where these are, where the conversations are taking place, and we need to get into them. So, but I'm positive if we can get into them, then we've got a lot to say. So, yeah, I'm feeling positive about it.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of new things that we should be looking at the same time, how we measure and register users through different, on different platforms, and through different that we reach through different tools. So, Marcella, what's your thoughts on that?
So I don't know if actually remember the exact question, but I'm gonna still answer it because it can still provide some different insight. I've been thinking a lot about how, libraries have been forced to adapt to COVID, right? But I don't think that in my perspective, and maybe it's because I'm an archaeologist, I feel that, libraries have been around for such a long time, and and libraries have kind of always adapted to the circumstances that the world needed when it was happening. So in that sense, it doesn't necessarily surprise me that libraries have been so, proactive in adapting to COVID. It's very refreshing to see it happen in front of us, and we are able to recognize how important our spaces are for the community as a whole, especially during times of crisis, right? So in that sense, I feel like kind of that's my answer. I'm not surprised. I'm happy to see it in real life because it's a reminder, in real time, and I feel like I could probably ask this question to all of us here, is like, you know, we are important for our society, libraries, and that has become very evident or re-evident, or we re-recognize that during this time of crisis, right? So I think that we have the potential, and we will be able to adapt, hopefully, knocking on wood here, to whatever this world throws at us. So just keep on the great work, and it's like I said, it's refreshing to hear all your wonderful stories of how you have adapted with your libraries in your own communities and contexts.
Exactly. I think the most marvelous thing was that libraries responded so quickly, and really, though the buildings were closed, libraries were open to their communities and knew what their communities need and how to reach them. And I think this is how we also got attention from the local authorities who cared about people close. So Pierre, your turn now. Remark.
Well, personally, I am very optimistic because I really believe that libraries are able to perform incredible things in their communities. But sadly, here in Brazil, I'm obliged to say that, well, for some, and very little some libraries, this is true. They are well adapting, and they learn a lot of things, and they are improving their actions. But for a lot of other libraries, well, actually, a lot of libraries are closing their doors here in Brazil. A lot.
All right.
In São Paulo state, we had in 2012 900 public libraries in the state. Now we have 350. So this is, and most of those closing libraries, it happened just in the 2, 3, or 4 years. This is not a pandemic thing, but pandemia, COVID, put very clearly the inequalities and also the inefficiencies of some libraries. And this is, of course, because many authorities in Brazil just don't understand what the libraries can do for their communities, but also because some librarians or some libraries don't understand what are really their role in this in their communities, and they still are just thinking in preserving stuff and very focused on collections and on how we organize collections, etc., etc. But they just turn They are back to the people who they are serving. And well, those libraries, if they aren't dead, they will dead, and very soon. Marcella has a point here, and also, I think everyone understands very very easily it. Libraries must be a useful tool for their communities, and there is the strong of the libraries, and if they don't do, bye bye.
Yeah, definitely. I agree that pandemic did not remove the outstanding threats to library networks, and in some cases even, amplified, because as you mentioned, that most libraries are still not at the same level before pandemic in terms of user numbers and registration. So definitely we need to develop, like viruses do, much better to survive and go and thrive. And now, Jeff, you are closing. You started this panel, and now your contribution
Okay,
for the closure,
yes,
please.
thank you so much, Ramon. For me, I excited by the positive impact of COVID pandemic is that it forced our library services to actually embrace um, change by drafting a digital transformation strategy that we didn't have before. I had to sit and research on what it looks like, this digital transformation, and understand the concept in relation to libraries. And what's exciting is that this digital transformation strategy includes reskilling and upskilling staff, and to get them to understand what is this new normal, why do we need to embrace technology, and how do we add it to our library services, while not discarding the traditional ways of working. But also the most exciting thing to me within that is change management that is long overdue for our senior staff. That is something we are working with a local university to get senior staff to understand why do we need to change how libraries function and the new normal. Lastly, I also found it exciting to see librarians embracing digital content creation, some of them registering for new courses, and including what we've done for young people who are interns in libraries. We try to introduce people who are not from the library sector, but for librarians to learn from them, to say, in marketing, this is what we do. In computer science, this is what we do. So I have a lot of hope for the new librarian that will emerge out of this pandemic is one who takes from the old ways of working and moves toward and embraces the new ways of working. So that's what I find exciting, so that we can serve the communities with better skills, digital skills, information literacy skills, etc.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you everyone for really excellent contributions. I think we have covered a lot of things, and also raised positive positive things that we got during the pandemic, but at the same time there are threats and new challenges and new questions and issues to solve. And it's up to library community really to build new variants that are more resilient for any disasters and emergencies we will have in the future. Thank you very much, and sorry again for technical issues in the beginning. Bye bye.